Jose Gonzalez, and I'll give the other board members a chance to introduce themselves.
Board member Varney here.
Alternate member Nishioka.
And board member Gwen here.
Thank you so much. And also I'd like to give a chance to the staff to introduce themselves. Whichever order.
Keith Staley, City Manager.
You go first, Josh.
Josh Eggleston, Chief Financial Officer. Go ahead, Dan.
Dan Atchison, City Attorney.
Jenny Matichak, Chief Accountant.
Hallie Leinenbach, Budget Manager.
Anya Hill, Treasury Supervisor.
Morton Hess, Senior Fiscal Analyst.
Kelly Blake-Schmidt, Management Analyst.
Shannon Thomas, Admin Analyst.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. I don't know if I missed anybody, but okay. All right. With that, also, see, we have an approval of the minutes. I'd entertain a motion for approval.
I move approval of the minutes from August 21st, 2023.
Motion from Varney, a second. Anybody?
I'll second. Second by Gwen.
Right, cool. Second by Gwen. Motion. Everybody in favor? Just thumbs up.
Aye.
Gail.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion passes. Minutes are approved. Josh, anybody signed up for public comment?
No, not today.
That'll move us into our action items. And let's see on the. I'm going to take it back to you, Josh, with the or maybe Keith, management update information items.
No, I can take those ones.
Perfect.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first item for your information is a quarterly investment report through September. I'm not going to go through that, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them. I'll just pause there for a moment. It's a lot of information, I know.
Josh, I don't know if this is a good time, but I did want to mention that in October we sold the shares in Chevron, so that will help the ESG rating that's in there. So we no longer hold those corporate treasury stocks.
Thanks, Jenny. And just a little history there. When we implemented the ESG portfolio component to the investment policy, the Chevron shares were currently owned, so we just divested from those. So they've been out there for a while, but now we're in full compliance with the ESG part of your investment portfolio.
What's ESG?
Environmental, social, and governance. So it's a somewhat newer strategy, but it's assigning risks to various investments based on multiple factors for environmental, social, and governance. And then if you look in the Treasury report toward the end, there's a whole section on that compliance piece and kind of outlines how it works and what it means. But it's really kind of up and coming. I feel like we're ahead of the curve. When we presented it to the short-term investment board with the state, they have to approve all our policy changes. It was new. They hadn't really seen it before, so they asked quite a few questions.
Deanna, did that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
No, thank you for your question. Member Nishioka, please. Question.
Thank you, Chair Gonzalez. So, Josh, you just said something about the state has to look over this. So I was unaware of that. So you have someone that reviews all of the investments, and there must be some mandates or regulations. Can you briefly touch on that, please?
So I definitely can't quote the ORS or the OAR, but yes, there's a short-term investment board with the state. I believe the state treasurer is a member and several other members are appointed, but they review all municipal investment policies. So how we invest and what we invest in is something they're concerned about. So it's something they approve when we have changes.
May I have a follow-up question?
Yes.
Thank you. So, is the team members on the finance department that I see here with us, are they the ones that work with you and the state on this, or is there someone else?
Yeah, so that was actually completed by Jenny Matichek, our chief accountant, and then we also have an investment advisor that helped us with that also.
All right, so there's a consultant, outside consultant as well.
Correct.
Wow, okay, a lot of work. Thank you.
Josh, just a question about that, on Jenny's comment. The approximately how many shares? Is there a dollar amount? When we're saying we got approval and we sold off shares, how much are we talking? Like roundabout? Are we? Was it a small part of our portfolio, or is it?
It was a fairly small part. So in our corporate shares, it was 1.9% of our overall portfolio. And if you want a dollar amount, I can try to find it.
It's 4 million.
4 million. Thanks, Anya.
So it does sound a little better in dollars. I mean, it's a little more. Any other questions for this part? And I guess anything else? I mean, one of the things that I always like to bring up is, there's that the market it's always changing, it's always evolving. Based on who you listen to, don't really know what to think sometimes. Any issues you see with what's happening out there in the market that could affect us?
Well, as a larger perspective, we have very, very safe investments. So I don't think much of the volatility you see out in the market, it will affect us. As far as larger trends, they're definitely affecting us. A lot of that is actually on the positive. So better investment earnings are expected in the future. I guess so. Those are just a couple comments, but happy to go further if people want additional information.
You answered my question, Josh. Any other questions from the panel, from the group? Sounds like
I'm
they're
good.
done, Josh. Oh, yeah, thank you. If you want to move on to the next section.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll share my screen. Everyone see that okay?
Yes.
You might not remember, but every year we present the 5-year forecast to the Budget Committee in January. As part of the Finance Committee's role, they get to have a preview of those assumptions that we use in them. At this meeting, we have the expenditure assumptions prepared. If we have a December meeting, we can go over revenue assumptions, but we're just not quite there yet. But we're planning to walk through the expenditure assumptions for the 5-year forecast. And just before we get there, a couple things about why we forecast and kind of the importance that we see. It evaluates current and future fiscal conditions. So just like we were talking about the economy, we're looking internally at our own cost situation and identifying those potential issues or challenges that we might see coming. And it also supports sustainable service delivery. So when the city council has a question, wants to model a new program or service, the kind of the baseline that you start with is the 5-year forecast. So it's really a tool for council and staff to measure new programs or services, or in the last several months, reductions. For the expenditure assumptions, we're going to be looking at compensation, health benefits, PERS, Oregon Public Employer Retirement System, and then specific expense factors also. And this is including your packet. I just pulled out a screenshot of it. But these are COLA assumptions, cost of living adjustment assumptions across all our bargaining units. This is very consistent with last year's forecast. We're not recommending any significant changes there. It has been updated for contracts that have settled since last year. So last year, IFF was in negotiation, it was since settled. So that's what you see here. In general, you'll see a 5% in the first year for unsettled contracts, and then 3% in the out years. I'll just pause to see if there's any questions here.
Not for me, Josh.
I will note, this is always a balance, right? You want to make sure you're realistic, but you're also want to make sure you're not overly conservative either. So it's really a balance here between, you know, projecting where you think bargaining might land and where your minimum cost is. So you wouldn't want to put, you know, 1% COLA here if there's no way that we'll settle out of 1%. So it always is a balance with the 5-year forecast to get to a number that everyone's comfortable with. Other personal services costs, and here's some major changes from last year. On the top line, the PPO medical plan, so our self-insured plan. I would say the majority of employees are part of that plan. We're anticipating 11% increase, followed by some other large increases. We've had some pretty alarming experience there the past year or so. I will say the recommendation that came from our consultant was actually a higher increase in the first year, but we'd like to play it out and see what the increase actually will be. For our fully insured plan for Kaiser Medical, so they're fully insured. We have several members on that plan. They came back with a 20% increase. This is one where we've negotiated it down a little bit, but unlike the self-insured plan, we can't make choices or adjustments to use fund balance since it is fully insured. Dental and vision, we're expecting a flat experience there, no increases. That's just really with our rate structure. Those have been at a higher rate the past several years. We're beginning to see where they're catching up with expenses. Workers' compensation. So as you well know, we're self-insured. So we're expecting an overall 18% increase in the workers' compensation premium charges to all departments, followed by a 70% increase for each of the other 4 years. And then no increases for life insurance or disability insurance. Any questions on these?
Trying to get unmuted here.
Counselor Nishioka also has her hand up. Sorry, I was looking at the room.
Perfect, no problem. Member Nishioka, if you want to.
Thank you.
First.
So with the 20% increase with Kaiser Medical, Josh, it sounded like the city's not able to move people from that to the PPO. You don't have flexibility with moving people if the rates go up from, like, if the PPO had gone up, could you have moved them to Kaiser? Or is this simply a choice they get?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. It's a member election, so they get to elect which service they have. I will say that the Kaiser insurance is still cheaper than the PPO plan. So the premium
even at
that we charge, it's still less expensive than the PPO plan. And then there is built into most contracts, if the Kaiser insurance costs more than the self-insured plan, the member will be responsible for the delta.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you for that clarity.
The cost for the city won't exceed the self-insured plan.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Member Nishioka, for your question. Member Varney.
Thank you. I guess a quick question. What is the employee percentage that they pay for the PPO versus Kaiser?
I believe everyone but the police union is 5%. I think police still have a somewhat unique contribution, but it's similar, but 5%.
Okay. Just comparing it to the state. And then for the workers' compensation, an overall increase of almost 18%. Did we have a bunch of accidents or something, or what caused that?
So I think it was before all of your time, a few years ago. We were actually doing really well with workers' compensation, and we did a rate holiday. So we didn't charge workers' compensation premium rates for 1 year. And that really aided in the fund balance. And I think we're seeing the result of that now with that lack of fund balance, and also some just insurance changes and claims activity. It's really driving that rate up. So it's not just one single factor, it's multiple factors.
Okay, thank you.
Great questions and just as great of answers, Josh. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? Go for it, Josh.
No, we'll move on to PERS. This is always everyone's most exciting subject. A couple things here. There's a lot going on. The previous slides, we're talking about increases, year-over-year increases. Here, we're talking about just a rate that's charged based on wages. So you can see tier 1 and 2. So those are, I think it's people who began work before 2003. I think that's right. And then OBSERT. So that's tier 3. Those are people who started work after 2003. And they all have a different rate based on the benefit. And there in 2025, that rate is set by the PERS board. So in the current year fiscal year 2024, and next year we have the rate that's set by the PERS board. After that, we don't have a rate. So this is based on actuarial information that the PERS board receives that we use to inform our decisions. Investment earnings have not been that great for the PERS fund. So we're taking that into account. We're seeing higher than average increases, higher than expected increases. The other thing that's happening here in 28 for part of the year and 29 is that the PERS obligation bond that was issued in 2005 is maturing in December of 2027. So right now we have a side account offset based on that PERS obligation bond. With that maturing and the side account expiring, we're still working with PERS on what that looks like, but it'll either come as a credit to PERS contributions, or we can roll it into another side account. But either way, it'll come out of the PERS rates, is what we're showing right now at a higher increase there in 2028 and 2029. See a question from Member Nishioka?
Yeah, Member Nishioka.
Thank you. So the bond that's maturing, is that a specific bond on our property taxes?
No, this is a PERS or a PERS obligation bond. So it's specifically for retirement the city issued, and it's paid back by the city. So city departments and funds all pay it back based on the employees that are in each fund or department. So it's not for property taxes, it's not from residents, but it's from the city administration for the general fund, utility funds, and all the other funds. So the debt service goes away, but so does the side account at the same time.
Okay, so I recall, is there something in the huge budget book that shows these as line items, or are they spread out through all of the different entities of?
Yeah, so it's a line item. So you'll see it as PERS unfunded liability. I believe for each of the line item details. And you'll see it right in there with the other PERS lines. So that you'll see going forward, and in 2028 you'll only see half of that because it's expiring in that December.
Great, thank you.
Member Varney.
Thank you. I know I've asked this before, but just to make sure, are any employees paying a portion of their PERS?
No. So the rates we're looking at here are the regular contributions. In addition to this, there's the PERS pickup that the city picks up on employees' behalf, another 6%. And there's also an IAP option for fire. So the IAFF union a couple of years ago negotiated a IAP option. So with there was a redirect basically, so that 6% part of it's being redirected for funding the general unfunded liability for the city. So they negotiated for an IAP option to make them whole based on that change. So those are the few different components.
Okay, but currently nobody, bargaining unit or otherwise, is paying a portion of that, right?
Of the PERS pickup fund.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Varney. Any other questions?
Next up is materials and services. So these are the other expense factors. And I will say that the budget office / the city takes a pretty conservative approach when we forecast. So we're looking at general inflation factors, but if we have better information or specific contracts, we're going to use that to escalate costs. For example, with IT, the last couple of years, they've had some pretty extreme contract changes. So in this case, we're looking at general inflation factor 3%. We're going to go with whatever the best knowledge is. So if it's 5 or 7%, we're going to use that instead. But for other line items like mail, supplies, things like that, that's where this general inflation factor is used. Gasoline and diesel, we're projecting a 0% increase. We've seen a lot of volatility the last couple of years. We're just leaving it flat. And we fully expect there to be some ups and downs over the 5 years, but since we don't have any clue what that might look like, we're just leaving at 0%. Internal charges. So these are budgeted transfers or borrowed and lent, where one department does work for another department across funds. And also the indirect cost allocation plan. So these are looking at increases. These are the personnel total changes across the forecast period. So 2.6 going up to 7.7, dropping a little bit there in 2029 for 4.9%. Liability insurance, similar to workers' comp, except a little bit worse. We're looking at a 63% increase, followed by 13% increases overall. That fund balance there is at risk. It's been depleted with some claims activity the last couple of years. And that doesn't take into account some new claims that are on the horizon, so we might even have to revisit this going in the future. Motor pool rate, fleet services. So fleet services provides mechanic and other support work to internal departments. So these are the increases they're looking at for their rates over the 5 years. Radio communications, a flat 4% across the 5 years. And then 911 services, we're looking at 5.2% for the 5 years. There's a couple asterisks there. That one in particular that's at the current staffing level. They've been discussing with their agency board and the city council and others about increasing staffing that would change this rate outlook. So just a heads up there that conversation is happening. I also spoke recently with the fire chief about bringing a fund balance policy for the WDCC fund, so the 911 Center Fund, to the finance committee so they can have a better understanding of what that fund balance entails, what the service looks like, and how it's structured, because it's somewhat unique. There's 29 agencies across a fairly wide geographic area, all being supported by our internal operation. Any questions on these items?
Any questions from the committee?
I don't have any.
I think we're good, Josh. I think we're good.
Great. And that actually concludes the forecast portion of it. I'd be happy to move on to the performance management if everyone's ready.
Yep, looks like we're ready, Josh. Thank you.
So this is going to be a brief overview. We did an introduction a couple of years ago at the budget committee, but It was kind of the last meeting. It kind of got buried a little bit. So we wanted to give everyone a heads up. We have the 2023 scorecard complete. I just want everyone to know it's out there. I'm going to show you where to find it here in a second too. But just real quick, as a preview, here's the scorecard for 2023. Again, it's organized by result area. So there's 6 major result areas where all our services live. Good governance, natural environment stewardship, safe and healthy community, safe, reliable, and efficient infrastructure, strong diverse economy, and welcoming livable community. And if you're going to find it from the city webpage, you can just go to budget and finance, and it's under performance measures. It has a little introduction. And then you can click on the portal. We won't go to the intro video today, but that's also some good information about where you can find different things. The annual scorecard, if you go there, you can see that same screen that we just looked at. And then if you want more detail on any of the results areas, so safe, reliable, and efficient infrastructure, 79%. If you click on it, you'll see the scorecard detail. It has a lot of good information about those different areas and different program groups. Length of roadside ditches clean. Some people might be interested to know that information. There's also a lot about the different areas: safe drinking water, safe streets and sidewalks, number of potholes repaired. We get a lot of pothole questions every year, but we do repair thousands. So each result area is going to have this same breakdown where you can look at the individual measures. You can also view detail about each of them, and I'll give you a little more information, a little longer description of why it's important to residents. You can also see the trend. We've been collecting some of this information since 2021. But some of the measures are new, so you're going to have a variation here. In this case, you see 21, 22, 23, and then a little bit of actuals for 24. In addition to those scorecard measures, you can also look at current performance. So the idea is that the current performance well, the idea is
try safe and healthy community, Josh.
the idea is that you can see the current performance by department, by results area. We'll check that. I know IT was helping us out this weekend actually to make sure it was updated, but maybe something didn't quite get updated correctly. So we'll check on that. In addition, there's some budget information here. Several years of actual and budget through 2024. You can see the result area and program. I know it's a lot. There's a lot on the screen, but if you click on a single result area, it gets a little simpler. Good governance, you can see all the programs ranked by size with this tree plot over here. So a lot of good information about how many employees, what the programs are. You can switch the year also. For priority-based budgeting, if you're familiar with that, we do have a lot of information on the website about that, but you can see the program score and the quartile also with the program. We do have budget to actuals also. So if you're wondering about the general funds in 2024, you can see the actual expenditures by department, by funds here. Now, this is updated monthly, so it's not live data. We're trying to get it updated by the 15th of every month. Any questions? Anything else you'd like to see? This is the first committee we've tried to present it to. My hope is actually that we would get feedback from this group to refine some of the measures perhaps, and also some of the displays if there's information we think would be helpful.
Josh, I want to first thank you for at least, just starting at the city's website and clicking through to show us. I think know that all this valuable information is just a few clicks away. Super transparent. I know we'll be dealing, we'll have a lot of interest from people wanting to dig deeper into the budget. So this is perfect timing. Any questions or comments from the committee members? They're just in shock, just how happy to get this information, Josh. That's why they're silent, so don't worry.
Of course. One quick comment, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
I will say it's iterative. So the 2023 scorecard looks a little different than the 2022 scorecard, and I anticipate that as we further refine data, it'll continue to change slightly as we get better measures that actually look at different outcomes. The scorecard might look a little different.
I totally agree. I think this is something we can refer to, but like you said, we definitely need to make sure we have the context, ask questions, just so totally agree. Thank you for saying that, Josh.
Sure.
All right. Anything else on this section, Josh?
No, not today.
Anything on continued business?
I'm not sure if it's continued business or new business, but I did want to talk about the December meeting, and if the Finance Committee wants to meet in December, or if you'd like to defer to January.
Any comments from any of the committee members? I know that luckily or unluckily, I think the budget is something we're all talking about every single day. So I don't mind waiting until this January unless somebody else has something pressing or wants something, or even Josh, if there's something you want to shake into us before the end of the year.
Not necessarily. The only thing that you would receive on the 18th is we would be prepared with the revenue side of the equation for the 5-year forecast, if that would be of interest. Looking at revenue lines specifically in the general fund for what we're anticipating. But again, it's not a requirement. We can definitely deliver that to you all as in your role as budget committee members in January also. Not a problem.
Sounds good. Any opinions on that? Is everybody okay with January or?
I'm fine with January.
Okay, anybody opposed to January?
Linda has her hand raised. Linda has her hand raised.
Oh, I see it. Yeah, sorry about that. Go ahead, Member Nishio.
That's fine. So, Josh, do you feel that, we don't know yet a timeline for January and task force and when this committee might want to know the information you would bring forward? Might we want to consider a financial committee meeting earlier in January if we're starting to overlap with, the opportunities for us to be informed before we get going on other things? That would be my only concern. I'm not advocating necessarily to have a meeting in December, and I honestly don't know if I would be able to attend, but I just wondered kind of a timeline further ahead.
Great question.
Yeah, appreciate the question. So January 10th is the budget committee meeting. We will have that forecast wrapped up in December. We try to get it done early enough that we can get it printed and delivered. I anticipate that forecast to have a few different scenarios in it. So as the city council's been talking about different reductions, I anticipate including those scenarios in that 5-year forecast as an option, with a baseline of the status quo and the service level. So if there are specific things you all would like included in the forecast, that's something I would be interested in. But I don't think you necessarily need to see it in advance to get what you'd like out of it.
Does that answer your question, Member Nishioka? Sounds good.
It kind of did. It sounds like we could wait and we'd get the information, but it may not require us to have a meeting beforehand. Am I understanding correctly?
Yeah, I believe so. If you'd like to see it ahead of time, I could send out a draft even or something like that before the budget committee gets it. But again, it's a large piece of work that takes a while to put together. So the options are pretty limited by that point of what changes we could make.
Makes sense.
Well, if the options are limited, it probably would be fine just to wait and get it all at the same time instead of the committee.
Member Varney, did your question get answered? Or do you have a question?
Yes, it did. I was curious about a draft ahead of time, but maybe we don't. I just see January 10th as coming up much quicker than we would think it would be. And I like to be prepared, but then I look back in December. Do I really want something a week before Christmas? So I'm okay either way. Doesn't matter. Whatever we do in terms of draft, I can go with it.
The final document you will receive it electronically the week prior. So the meeting's on the 10th, but you'll get it the week before. And we'll have physical copies ready for you, either in your box or at the meeting on the 10th. So hopefully that allows you enough time to review it. December always flies by. So that's why that's always a challenge, especially those last 2 weeks. It's hard to get groups or people together to review items.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you both for your comments that made it more clear. Thank you, Josh, for explanation. Now, the only other thing I wanted to add, anything else on this section? Anything else? I just wanted to mention that Josh and I had a meeting a few months ago, and one of the things I suggested is that maybe something new we can add to our finance committee meetings is bringing in, key staff to give us a little more context, a little more explanation about what they do day to day. As we look at the big budget book, sometimes it's hard to understand the actual work that goes into those numbers. We're seeing just digits and black and white paperwork. And, I always give the example, and this is pretty obvious, but I had a downtown business owner call me years ago. His graffiti wasn't getting removed. I went to the budget book before I reached out to the city. I saw there's one staff. So I was able to reach out to the city and find out that person had gotten into an accident and was out for 2 weeks. So everything got behind. So it was pretty cool to be able to answer the question directly and sort of follow it backwards. So I thought that was valuable. And, so being able to see behind the scenes on some of these positions or mini departments within departments, I think will be valuable for us as finance committee members as we're out there talking about, revenue. And so does that thoughts or questions on that? Because, definitely it's up to the committee if you see a value. Member Nishioka.
Thank you, Chair Gonzalez. Yes, I think it's always helpful to understand the book is big, and I'm already spinning with the numbers that we're seeing, the graphs that we're seeing, in the sense of how do I try to understand all of this? And clearly, I really am not going to be able to understand all of the details, but to get the overall information and then guidance if Josh feels that certain staff could come in and kind of explain, how their department works and where the glitches are that could happen. I'm not sure. I think that something like that, actually, I'm just kind of now talking, might be better for the task force to understand the nuances of the need for revenue and sort of why. So I appreciate your ask, Chair Gonzalez. What I just would want to know is if we feel that that will help us in some ways as we go through our financial committee, and especially in preparation for the upcoming budget meetings. So I guess this is more like a question. I like the idea, but I'm still unsure.
Yeah, and part of it to me this was even really before the vote happened, this is, to me, was something set for the long term. That is, we sit on this committee that we're able to better understand at least bite-sized amounts of information and understand it a little bit better. Whether or not it directly translate to especially what we have in front of us today, but this is more long-term, just to have it as part of our finance committee. That way it gives us chance as finance committee members to, report back to the council and be able to say, we went over this report, but also we had a presentation from this person about this committee, and we got in deeper, and here are some of the things I didn't know about what they do day to day, and hopefully that pulls in some interest from the council and maybe community members to want to get in a little bit deeper, So that's what it was. It was sort of a long-term thing, but in this case, we do have the budget revenue issue in front of us, so might help there, but it's not intended just for that part.
I would look to hear what others have to say. I mean, again, I think the concept is good. I don't know if it would involve too much staff time. And I guess I would just want to make sure that we're not overworking, I guess, is a one way.
Yeah, any other comments? Oh, go ahead, Member Varney, yes.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Member Nishioka in many respects. I think I wouldn't want this to take up much staff time. I think it's a good concept, but I think the audience should be broader than just our committee, and maybe even broader than the potential revenue committee. I was thinking of something maybe like the 90 parks in 90 days, some little blurbs that could go out there that we could communicate to the public about some jobs potentially. Anyway, just an idea, but I do like the idea, but I do think it should be a broader audience.
Thanks, Member Varney. And I ran this by Josh, and he felt it was a good idea, that he felt that some of the staff would actually want to come and share a little bit more about what they do. So it was definitely not to be a burden. But we have to somehow, all of us have to better grasp what's in this budget. We have to. Yeah, everybody's have to put in a little bit more. All of us, staff, us. I mean, the city's requiring it of us. So that's the other part of it. But Josh, remember the conversation we had? I don't know if you want to share some of your feedback on that.
Yeah, I do. I think it could be valuable. I don't know how it intersects with the revenue task force / the budget committee, city council. One of the things when I was talking with the fire chief about the 911 center is that's something I think that the finance committee might have some great insight with a fund balance policy and hearing more about that operation. And there might be others with more of maybe a finance implication that would be helpful to hear from, or you're hearing from staff about different services where we have financial decisions that are made. Maybe that's where we focus, where it has more of a financial angle with the finance committee, and maybe leave some of the broader services to a wider audience. Maybe just based on this conversation, maybe that would be a helpful direction.
Totally, Josh. We do this at your direction. What you recommend would be valuable to us, just like you present the agenda today. The kind of information we're reviewing. Yeah, this would definitely be in your hands. Yeah.
Great. So we'll try it and see what feedback you all have.
Yeah. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, members. Any other comments or questions before we adjourn? I'm assuming any other new business, Josh, before?
No, nothing else.
Give it a few seconds. Well, sounds like we want to thank you and the staff for your time. Like you answered all our questions, and I think we'll be seeing most of you shortly. The meeting's adjourned. Thank you.